Greetings, 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 greetings. Desire your King, King Clifford Jefferson, Senator Godfrey, the fifth kind of man Jew, son of folk, ruler of Jerusalem. I am the reincarnation of King Edward the Peaceful, which we know here at the Third Timothy English Church of England as King Edward the Peaceful. The date is May 7th, 2024, which we know is in the Berber year 2974. I come today with another marvelous lecture, pretty much uh, uh, part two of what was of the previous lecture that was done in regards to Edict of Expulsion and the reason why. Okay, part two for the reason of the Edict of Expulsion and the reason why. I give honor to my queen, Sister Godwinson from the House of Godwinson, Archbishop Belmont from the House of Belmont, Countess Searchy from the House of Searchy. I go to all those who are members of the Third Timothy Church of England who are trying to get understanding of what it is that we are here and called to do. First of all, I'm going to give honor to our ancestors because for allowing me to be able to be the medium, be able to articulate and to demonstrate that which was preserved from time immemorial. I hope that all those who are viewing these lectures are really taking heed to what it is that I'm saying. Okay, I'm not saying to be all wise or all knowing. All I know is that what was given to me from the past that was we came from my ancestors is what I'm revealing to my people now. Okay, so this is not a prejudice movement, a bias movement, nor is it an anti-Semitic movement. Right? It's about preserving the estate for us as Anglo-Saxon Berbers. Okay, preserved under the misnomer of English people, right? Because this is what is termed in this present day. I'm going to go back over some of the information that was taught in my past lecture. As babies, we need to continue to be fed. We need to continue to go back over the material so that way we can have it fresh in our minds and be able to call it at will to the degree as it was taught. Okay, for myself, it takes me a couple of times to regurgitate the information, to be able to articulate it and give it back to you. So I know it takes time. But for all those who are studious to what it is that I'm saying, you truly understand and know that I am who I say I am. That, let's get started with this marvelous lecture. Come back over the material. Of course, as we see it displayed on the screen from the family crest and coats of arms, which is deals with heraldry. All right, it says the original name, according to the spelling of the name, Berber, spelled Berber. History of the name Berber begins with the Anglo-Saxon tribe, Britain. It is derived from the baptismal name, meaning son of Barbara. In some instances, the name may have also been a nickname for someone such as a Moor or a Berber who appeared to be of North African heritage. In such case, the name is a reference to the Barbary coast of North Africa. Okay? So the history of the English name Berber, as opposed to the other spellings of the names, as we see here, Barbara, Barbary, and all the other uh, uh, denotations. All right, it says it's an Anglo-Saxon name and it originated in England. The surname Berber, according to the name being associated with a family, was first found in London. Okay, was first found in London. When we say London, we know London is denoted to a city, and the city is where the government is actually established. Okay, it's called the municipal government. Right, it precedes the county or the state. All right, because the government sits in the city. So the surname Berber associated with the family was first found in London. We know Rome had a London, and we know England had a London. One was called Londinium, one was called London Wit. Everyone hold that thought for a minute. Think the surname Berber was first found in London. You know, London is the city. We know in Alfred the Great's time, it was called London. And then on the other side of the wall, which we call the London Wall, it was called Londini. Okay, called Londini. So the surname Berber was first found in London. London is found in two places. One in Berkshire, and one is in Firth. We know Firth is in Scotland. We know Berkshire is in England. Okay, Berkshire is in England. So it's really about understanding us as Berbers. You know, really knowing who we are as Berbers. That's the whole key, right? We are Anglo-Saxon Berbers, right? We want to qualify this. Does everybody want to be Jews? Everybody want to be Israelites? Everybody want to be Hebrews? All right. Everybody want to be associated with the ancient family or that family, the top family, or the what we call the noble family or the honorable family or what else we got out there. Uh, the monarch family, okay? The king. All right. Everybody want that station. All right. Right. And everybody call themselves kings. They throw the name around loosely, but no one really associates the name king with the position of what a king actually means. Doing the class, bro. Everything good? All right. Oh, nice and slow for everyone. Go to the genetic testing. We can do this again, but we have to repeat it so we can make sure we have it, we understand it. Berbers and Arabs, as well as the difference between Berbers and Jews. Okay, we have to understand that difference. Right. This is why this lesson is being done today. This is why we have the Edict of Expulsion and the purpose of why the Edict of Expulsion took place. Right. If I stutter or if I slip in words, I apologize. I have a lot of material, and I just want to make sure you all get it. So I might stumble on the date, but nonetheless, the information is right before you. Okay, all right. Is hard enough for one individual to be able to be a medium for all this information that was preserved and held sacred by those who didn't want you to have this information, but yet, I took it upon myself to be able to reveal it to you without it being diluted, intermixed, or what else, amalgamated with any other thing other than the history that it originated from, which we know goes back into what we call here at the Third English Church of England, time immemorial. Berbers and Arabs facing the genetic diversity and the history of the southern Tunisia through the genome-wide analysis. The seventh and the eighth and the eighth and ninth crusade took place in Tunisia. The capital city of Tunisia is Tunis. This crusade, the ninth crusade, was called Edward the First Crusade. All right, Edward Longshanks Crusade. All right, the eighth, that's the ninth crusade, which was to Tunisia. It started from the eighth crusade, but started with Louis the Ninth. All right, Louis IX was a member of the Capetine dynasty, and the Capetine dynasty was born with the Plantagenet dynasty, from where the Angevin, as well as the Yorks and the Lancaster branches, descended down from. Okay, so we have to understand that this whole synopsis needs to be understood in its totality, and that's the reason why I continue to go over these lessons. Right. So now we're excluding the Arabs as well as we're going to exclude the Jews. All right, which is associated with the Scottish Jews. All right, which is the one who wrote the story for you or this narrative. And I always say, he who writes your books sets a timeline. Time number was when we was not. The life of time began. This time will come when there will be no more. All right. So this is the evidence. All right. Here's the clear evidence. Objective. Tunisia has been a crossroad for people from Africa, Europe, and the Middle East since prehistoric times. At present, it is inhabited by two main ethnic groups, Arabs and Berbers, and several minorities. The study aimed to advance knowledge regarding the genetic structure using new population sampling and genome-wide approach. Material and method. We investigated genomic variations, estimated ancestry components, and dated admixtures events in 3 Berbers and 2 Arab populations from southern Tunisia, mingling a data including Middle Eastern, Sub-Saharan, and European populations. Results found. Difference in the proportions of North African, Arabians, and European ancestries and the varying impact of admixtures in isolation, determined significance, heterogeneity, and the genetic structure of southern Tunisian population. Admixture times estimated show a multi-layer pattern of admixture events involving both ethno-linguistic groups, which started around the mid-11th century and lasted for nearly 5 centuries. I repeat, this ethno-linguistic group, which started around the mid-11th century and at least for nearly 5 centuries. Discussion. Our study provides evidence that the relationship between the genetic and cultural diversity of old and new inhabitants of North Africa, and southern Tunisia followed different patterns. The Berbers seem to have preserved a significant part of their common genomic, parts of from pronouncing the word wrong, heritage despite Islamization, Arab cultural influence, and linguistic diversity. Compared to Morocco and Algeria's Southern Tunisia Arabs have retained a high level of Arabian ancestry. This is more evident in the semi-nomad Arbeya, who have kept their original Bedouin lifestyle, than in the population from Duet, who have undergone multiple events of stratification and admixture. Okay? Everybody can use that as a nice reference. Berber Jews. Berber Jews are the Jewish communities of the Maghreb in North Africa who historically spoke Berber languages between 1950 and 1970. Most immigrated to France, the United States, or Israel. For those who don't like the source of Wikipedia, here's your source. Shakib Moshe, the dual heritage immigrants from the Atlas Mountains and the Israel village. Okay, so there's a source for you. Everybody go to the box. Language. Traditional Berbers, also Judeo-Arabic, with Judeo-Berbers as a contact language, modern typically the language of whatever country they now reside in, including modern Hebrew and Israel. Okay? Religion, Judaism, Hebrew and Israel, related ethnic groups associated with Berber Jews. Jews, Mizrahi, Sephardi Jews, and other Jewish groups. Let's go a little bit more in depth on that, right? They said Berber Jews are those associated with Berbers are the Ashkenazims, the Mizrahims, the Sephardim, the Tehum, the Beta Israel, Guzanim, Jurahim, Bukharim, the Altalkim, the Ramanoti. If I'm pronouncing these words wrong, please forgive me. The Kotanim, and the B'nai Israel. So these are all groups that are associated with Berber groups, okay? And they even included the Ashkenazi, okay? We're going to talk about them today, all right? They give some pictures. Mizraim, the Sephardims, at Israel, all right? Uzinins, Uhurims, Bukharims, and Italian Jews or Roman Jews, the Romanitos Jews, the Kochanim, and the Ben in Israel. Okay, so these are all groups associated with Berbers. Okay, and the first one or the first category they gave you was Ashkenazi Jews. Okay, that's very important for you to understand where I'm going with in today's lesson. Pretty much what I talked about yesterday, but I'm just going back over it. Okay, so it's very important for you to understand. And take our time with this. And we know the Berber name Jew associated in England. Okay, and we know England was called England before it be called Great Britain. All right, and two, the word is spelled in English. All right, and if it's spelled in another language, then we have to associate the name with the language and with the origin where the language originated from. But in this case, it's spelled with English letters. So we first going to use that avenue to come to our conclusion, right? As well as we went to the genetic testing, all right, dealing with Berbers and Arabs, all right, tracing genetic diversity and history of the Southern Tunisians through the genetic wide analysis, and we seen what that said, all right. Then we went to the Berber Jews, all right. We read a little bit on the Berber Jews, right, which we are now. Let's go down a little bit. Genetic origin, genetic studies on Jews associated with the Berbers. Okay, associated with the Berbers. In the past, it would have been very difficult to decide whether these Jewish Berbers plans were originally of Israelite descent and had become assimilated with the Berbers in language and some cultural habits, or whether they were indigenous Berbers who, in the course of centuries, have become Jewish through conversion by Jewish settlers. The second theory was developed mainly in the first half of the 20th century as a part of the quest of French colonial authorities to discover and emphasize pre-Islamic customs among the Berber Muslims. Populations since such customs and ways of life were believed to be more amendable and assimilable to French rule, legitimatizing the policy that the Berbers would be governed by their own customary law rather than Islamic law. All those who need sources for what I'm teaching, you can look in the brackets. They'll give them to you. Okay. We're not trying to cause confusion. All those who are viewing our channel and who are not acting in a manner befitting those within this church, our ancestors would deal with you. So we're going to ignore you. We're going to continue on with this lesson. So the theory of a massive Judaization of the Berber population was further dismissed by a 2008 study on the mitochondrial DNA transmitted from mother to children. The study carried out by Bahar and etc., meaning that when you see ETAL, that means other people were a part of the study, analyzed small samples of North African Jews, i.e. Libya, 83%, Morocco, 149 parts. So I don't know what within the bracket the number pertains to, but as you see, it's Libya, 83, Morocco, 149, Tunisia, 37, indicating that Jews from North Africa lack typically North African HGM1 and U6 mitochondrial DNAs. Hence, according to the authors, the lack of U6 and M1 hapalon among the North African Jews rendered the possibility of a significant admixture, as between the local Arabs and Berbers population with Jews unlikely. The genetic evidence shows them to be distinct from Berber population, but much more similar to Ashkenazi Jews population. Okay? Here's your source again. The matrilineal genetic ancestry of the Jewish diaspora. Okay? The Jewish diaspora. Very important to understand that. Here's your source. Let's go back to the 1911 Encyclopedia for Britannica. Okay? Make sure you save that. 1911 Encyclopedia Britannica. This is the British encyclopedia. Right? We went over this a couple of times now, but I got to continue to beat y'all on the head with it so to make sure you understand it. Right? So people, won't mislead you or try to misguide you, by acting ignorant in the chat. We want to make sure that we hold our nobility, right? I'm a king. You're a noble family. You're a noble ancestor. So we act in a manner befitting. Okay. So we're going to continue to do as we always do, prove them wrong. Right. So 1911 Encyclopedia Britannica, which is the British encyclopedia. The British deals with the Scottish Jews. All right. Or the Akhenaten Jews. All right. Yes, they are the same people. Greetings, Brother Dever from the House of Dever. Okay, I'm glad you was able to join me. Don't respond to anything in the chat that you see that's not befitting a member of the Third Tebinga Church of England. Let them run, okay, brother? As well as all those who are on this fast today. Give you 1 second. (1911) Encyclopedia. Remember, this is something that they preserved for us once we became conscious of who we were, right? You know, everybody rant about they are these people, but they don't have a calendar nor any records to validate their existence. And upset about us declaring and observing as a result of the realization of who we were, that was preserved by them who they are. Okay? So it's power. It's power and information. All right? Because information means to get informed. All right? To be informed. Berber is the name under which are included various branches of indigenous Libyan races of North Africa. Since the dawn of history, the Berbers have occupied tracts between the Mediterranean and the Sahara from Egypt to the Atlantic coast. Right? It gets better every time we go over it. Right? I promise you. The origin of the name is doubtful. All right? Because everybody want to use the name. All right? But aren't these people? Some believe it to be derived from the word barbarians, employed first by the Greeks and later by the Romans. These, of course, are the other people on the side of the wall, called Londinia versus Londonwick. And Londonwick is where Alfred the Great, which was the Anglo-Saxon Berber, came from, okay? Because he, the one that established what we call Wittenman or Witten, okay? Yes, I didn't go over that yesterday, but we'll discuss it today, right? Thus, the true ethical name may, now I'm going to read. Other attributed the first use of the term to Arab conquerors. However, this may be tribal titles. Barbara or Bera Barata appear in Egyptian inscriptions of the 1700s and the 1300 BC. Okay, and the Berbers were probably intimately related with the Egyptians in very early times. I'm very slow for you. Thus, the true ethical name may have become confused with barbarian, the designation naturally used by classical conquerors. Okay, by classical conquerors. All right, just like William the Conqueror. All right, the first time Jews existed was with who? William the Conqueror. In what year? 1066. They were expelled in what year? 1290. Okay, all right, 1290. And before 1290, they came into England with William the Conqueror, which is the Frankish king, and what we call 1066. All right, and that's the first time the word or the term or the history of Jews appeared on the record. Okay. To the Egyptians, they were known as Lebo, Mashuasha, Tamahu, or Tehanu, and the Kakaha. As a long list of names is found in Herodias, and the Romans called them Numidae, Gratuli, and Morbi terms, which have been derived respectively from the Greeks. Okay? in order for the Greek to write a story, you need a Greek calendar, right? So remember that. Name Guadola of the great Berber tribe and the Hebrew Mahar in Western. So as we can see, dealing with Berber Jews, and a lot of people claim to be associated with Berbers, but that has yet to been proven. All right. To speak a more modern term, there could be enumerated the Zowar and the Jabalia in Tripoli in Tunisia, uh, the Chaua, the Kabils, if I'm pronouncing wrong, please forgive me, and Benai Mizab in Algeria, the Shulu in Chalua, Amazi in Berbers of Morocco, the Tori, the Anshanab, Sorgu, etc. in Sahara. These tribes have many sub-tribes, each with a distinctive name. Among the Ashgar, an important division of the Tauric, one of the noble or free tribes styled Oregon. When I am wrong, please forgive me. It is said to the descendants from the tribe named Averkha or Africa is in ancient times occupied the coast land near what they call Carthage. And some scholars derive the word Africa from the name. See, Africa and Rome. In regards to the ethnic relations of the Berbers, there are many more. There have been much dispute. The antiquity of their type is evidenced by the monuments of Egypt. Okay, they keep talking about Egypt. Why? Where their ancestrals are pictured with the same comparatively blonde features with many others, which many of them still display. The Aborigines of the Canary Islands, the Gaunties, who seem almost certainly from the remains of their language to have been Berber. But the problem of the actual origin of the Berber race has not yet been solved. They said it twice. You know? They said it twice. Perhaps the most satisfactory theory is that of Sergi, who includes the Berber and the Mediterranean race, in the Mediterranean race. General LLC Farhabeg regards them as an indigenous Libyan mingled white fair-skinned people of European origin. All right? We don't know if this is true or not. Dr. Franz Bunabay and Henry Devoria and the Professor Flinders maintains that they are closely related to ancient Egyptians. So everybody tried to associate the Berbers with them, okay? But it has not been proven. This is debate, this is discussion, but no proof has been given to validate it. It's just presumption, right? We come today to do away with the presumption and prove once for all and true in the fact that we are the Anglo-Saxon Berbers. Connection has been traced between the early Libyan race and the Cro-Magnon and other early European races, and the latter, the Basque people, the Iberians, the Picts, the Celts, and the Gauls. The megalithic monuments of Iberia and Celtic Europe have their counterparts in North Africa, and it's suggested that these were all erected by the same race, by whatever name they be known. Berbers and Libyans in Africa, Iberians in Spain, Celts, Gauls, and Picts in France and Britain. Okay? In spite of history of foreign conquest, Phoenician, Greeks, Romans, Vandals, Arabs, and French, the Berber physical type and the Berber's temperament and nationality, you hear that? Not based off of color or skin, but it said a nationality, a nation of people have persisted since the Stone Age. This is what a 1911 encyclopedia that was created by the corporation of the Encyclopedia Britannica in Edinburgh, Scotland. All right? The numerous invasions have naturally introduced a certain amount of foreign blood among the tribes fringing from the Mediterranean, but those farther inland have preserved their racial purity to a surprising degree. Though considerable individual differences of type may be found in every village, the Berbers are distinctly assumed a white race, and the majority would, if classed in European customs, pass unchallenged as European, i.e., attested, which is proved it and the let's just go back to improve it. Here's the proof. Here's the proof. Here's your proof. We got some more proof, but for the sake of the class, I'm not going to go through it. Those who want to see it, go to my last lecture, and you'll see it where I use the same source to prove that not only are the Arabs different from the Berbers based off genetic study, but we showed that the style of Turner was associated with the Berbers of Tunisia, and we also proved that the Berbers were the creator of the Homo sapiens in North Africa as well as on the European continent. Okay, for all those who want that clarification and that validity or that proof, go to my last video and watch that. Okay, let's go back to the 1911 Britannica. Right here. Dark hair and brown or hazel eyes are the rule. Blue eyes, blinds are found, but their frequency has been considerably overstated. Okay. The invaders who have most affected the Berber races are the Arabs, but the two races with a common religion, often of common government, with the same tribal grouping, have failed to amalgamate to any great extent, meaning that there was no mixture, a greater mixture. This fact has been emphasized by Dr. R.G. Latham, who writes, listen very closely, all that is not Arabic in the kingdom of Morocco, all that is not Arabic in French provinces of Algeria, and all that is not Arabic in Tunis, Tripoli, and Fez is Berber. Okay? It's Berber. The explanation lies in a profound distinct of character. All right? Ethnicity. The Arab is a herdsman and a nomad. The Berber is an agriculturist and a townsman. The Arab had built his social structure on the Quran, where it inculcates absolutism and aristocracy, theocracy, and the Berber, despite his nominal Mohammedanism, is a democratic with his Jimna, which they call Witteman, and his Kanun or a written code, i.e. called the Magna Carta of individual liberties as opposed to the community's good. Just go down on this. The Kanun forbids no sort of exercise of individual will, so long as it's not inimical to the rights or rights of other, so long as it's not inimical to the rights or rights of other individuals. The advertising of the Berbers is indeed limited to little beyond the conversion of the latter to Islam. The Arab transporting to a soil which does not always suit him, so far from thriving, tends to disappear, whereas the Berber becomes more and more aggressive and really increases in numbers. At present, he forms at least 3/5 of the population in Algeria, and in Morocco, the proportion is greater. The difference between a Berber and an Arab of the Barbary state is summed up by Dr. Randall McSiver in the following words. The Berber gives the impression of being as he is, the descendant of men who have lived in sturdy independence, self-governing, and self-reliant. The Arab is a degenerate, offspring of a race which only from his history and past records can claim any title of respect. Okay, so that's from the 1911 Encyclopedia from Britannica, which was written by British, would I say British or Scottish enlighteners, those who were enlightened in the Scottish Enlightenment. Okay, those who were enlightened in the Scottish Enlightenment among what we call the Scottish this diaspora. All right, we talked about that yesterday. We're going to talk about it again today, just to bring it full concrete, so that you can understand that we are truly indeed are the Berber. So I'm just going over history. I haven't gotten into anything new right now. We're just going over what we talked about in the last video. So when you go back, you can be like, "Wow, King, you good with this?" And of course, I'll have to say thank you. All right. Encyclopedia Britannica. Encyclopedia Britannica, or British Encyclopedia, is a general knowledge English language encyclopedia. All right. It has been published by the Encyclopedia Britannica Incorporated Company. Okay. As we can see, the Encyclopedia Britannica, or the British Encyclopedia, is an encyclopedia of general knowledge, and encyclopedia of general knowledge is simply what they call crystalline knowledge, or crystalline. Let's read what they say. General knowledge is information that has been accumulated over time through various media and sources. We share this. General knowledge is information that has been accumulated over time through various media and sources. It includes specialized learning that can only be obtained with extensive training and information confined to a single medium. We're not using that. We're using crystalline intelligence, and general intelligence means that the meaning we use is from what we observe from the world that we're surrounded by. All right. We always say, he who writes your books sets your timeline. Okay. We know time never was when we were not. If the life of time begins, the time will be no more. All right. So we don't rely on what's presented to us. We have to investigate what's been given to us so that we can separate the truth from the lies. Okay. The truth from the lies. All right. As we can see, what the Encyclopedia Britannica, or the British Encyclopedia, said about the Berbers, as well as those who are not Berbers, as well as it said, oh, I think I missed something. Oh, yeah. We know that it said that the Berbers' form of government was called written. All right. And we know that the uncode was called the Magna Carta, which we'll talk about in 1 second. So we know the Encyclopedia Britannica is a general knowledge encyclopedia that was created by the Encyclopedia Britannica Incorporated Company. All right. So just go there real quick. We're actually in school. Right. We're in school. Encyclopedia Britannica Incorporated is the company known for publishing the Encyclopedia Britannica. It's the world's oldest continuously published encyclopedia. The company also owns the American dictionary publisher Merriam-Webster, and though historically British, it is now based now in the United States of America. Okay, this is where the company is based now, right? But it was founded in Edinburgh, Scotland. All right. Why was it founded, and what time era was it founded? The company was founded in Edinburgh, Scotland in the 18th century during the historical period termed the Scottish Enlightenment. Okay? The Scottish Enlightenment. So, what is the Scottish Enlightenment? We talked about this yesterday. We just repeat it. The Scottish Enlightenment was a period in the 18th and the 19th century. All right? In Scotland, characterized by the outpouring of intellectual and scientific accomplishment. By the 18th century, Scotland had a network of private schools and Scottish law land of five universities. The Enlightenment culture was based on close readings of new books and intense discussions, but took place daily at such intellectual gathering places in Edinburgh. All right. So that's what was the Scottish Enlightenment about: Scottish people getting together and enlighten themselves by the information that they obtain in these particular places that we see here on the screen. All right. That's basically what it said. Go a little bit further. The Scottish Enlightenment had effects far beyond Scotland, not only because of the esteem in which Scotland's achievements were held outside of Scotland, meaning not in their particular on and not in Scotland itself, but around the world in other areas that were influenced by Scotland. And when we say Scotland, we're talking about the British monarch or the British government, okay? But also because its ideas and attitudes which were carried all over Great Britain and across the Western world as part of the Scottish diaspora and by foreign students who studied in Scotland. So we know when we talk about the Western world, and we're talking about Great Britain, we're talking about 1707, the Treaty of Union. All right. You didn't prior to 1707, there was no union. You had the Union of Crowns in 1603. All right. And that only came about by way of the Treaty of Perpetual Peace of 1503. 1503, we're talking about. So we have the Treaty of Union of 1707, which originated from the Union of the Crowns in 1603, which originated from what we call the Treaty of Perpetual Peace in 1503. All right. So three important dates: 1503, 1603, and 1707. All right. So let's go to the Scottish diaspora. This is all in the 18th century, y'all. All in the 18th century. The Scottish diaspora consists of the Scottish people who immigrated from Scotland and their descendants. All right. So they immigrated from Scotland. They ain't talking about when they first got there. They immigrated from Scotland and went all around the world. All right. This is why they call it diaspora. The diaspora is concentrated in countries such as the United States, Canada, Australia, England, New Zealand, Ireland, and to the lesser extent, Argentina, Chile, and Brazil. Okay, so the Scottish diaspora resulted from the Scottish Enlightenment, and the Scottish Enlightenment is based off the information that they obtained, that they learned in their university, in their school, based off their teaching. But where did they get it from? Because we're talking about in the 18th century, but everyone has a history that they have to go back to. All right. So what history did they steal to promulgate their history that they have now? All right, which we know America is living off. All right, because the history that they have came under what we call the Commonwealth. All right, Republic. The Commonwealth Republic, which started from the Battle of Dunbar in 1296 and ended in 1650 with the Battle of Dunbar. All right, and all of this was done under the British monarch. These are facts. All right, we're going to talk about it. So we know the Scottish diaspora consists of the Scottish people who immigrated from Scotland and their descendants. Immigrated from Scotland. Okay. Immigrated from Scotland. Everybody keep that perception in your head. What it said? Immigrated from Scotland. Let's just look this up. Immigrate is the act of leaving a residency country or place of residence with the intent of settling settling elsewhere. Because it's called migration. This is what you call migration. Migrating somewhere. All right. You're not going back to where you're going, where you come from. You're going to somewhere where you don't know where you're going. All right. Everybody needs to understand that. The Scottish diaspora. All right, concerning the Scottish people who left Scotland after they got to Scotland, and when they got to Scotland, you got to go back to what we call uh, Scottish, what we call history of Jews in Scotland. All right, we got to go there. So let's go there. And we know Berber Jews. One main group was the Ashkenazi Jews. Did they say that? As well as all the other cliques who are associate themselves who are associated with the group with Jews, but claim to be Berbers, but they are not Berbers. Okay, there's a difference between a Jew and Berber, and a difference between an Arab and a Berber. All right, totally different. And we're going to show that difference. We know through the Scottish diaspora, the Jews migrated somewhere else other than Scotland, where they migrated to uh, 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 back when they were termed under the term Ashkenazi. Let's read about it. The history of the Jews in Scotland goes back to at least the 17th century, and it goes back even further. It goes back to the 11th century. All right, it goes back to the 11th century. All right, where they came into England and were expelled from England and what we call the Scottish independence in 1290. All right. So the history of the Jews in Scotland goes back to at least the 17th century. It is not known when Jews first arrived in Scotland, but the earliest concrete, you hear that word, concrete historical references. So this is not a belief. It is concrete historical references to the Jewish presence in Scotland being from the late century. Most, you want a reference? There you go. Here's your source. Source. Most Scottish Jews today are of Ashkenazi background who mainly settled in Edinburgh, then in Glasgow in the mid-19th century. Hear that, y'all? Hear that? So the history of the Jews in Scotland came about in the 18th century, and these Jews who settled there were Ashkenazi Jews. All right, and the Ashkenazi Jews not just originated in the 17th century, they go back to the 11th century, and not just the 11th century, but based off the abstract story to the time going back to what we call 1 AD. Okay, 1 AD. We go back to the time of, matter of fact, 3761, which was creation of the Hebrew Bible. All right, which in the Berber year is 1 BC 1 AD. All right, we're gonna talk. So the history of the Jews in Scotland in the 17th century were Ashkenazi Jews who settled in Edinburgh, the same place the 1911 Encyclopedia Britannica by British or i.e. Scottish Jews originated from. Through the Scottish Enlightenment, then the Scottish diaspora, once they learn all they need to know to take that mess around the world. Okay? Very important for you to understand. Ashkenazi. Get an understanding about what that is. Who are the Ashkenazi Jews who migrated to England in the 11th century, all right, with William the Conqueror. Then we know that they were expelled in the 13th century by Edward I through the Edict of Expulsion. Then we know in 1296, you had the Battle of Dunbar, all right, when they were yeah, that's around the same time of their expulsion, and then they were allowed to come back in the Battle of Dunbar in 1650 by the same Scottish or affiliated members who are affiliated with the British monarch system. Okay, it's very important because you have the Scottish diaspora. Now they talk about a Jewish diaspora. Once again, the Scottish diaspora when they left Scotland, all right, but they went to Scotland, right? As we just said, as we just read, in the 18th century. And Edinburgh, the first place they settled was in Edinburgh. First place they settled was in Edinburgh, Scotland. All right. And the Ashkenazi Jews constitute a Jewish diaspora population that emerged in the Holy Roman Empire around the end of the first millennium CE. Traditionally spoke Yiddish and largely migrated toward Northern and Eastern Europe during the Middle Ages due to persecution. Okay? You need your sources. Right? I'm not making this up. These are sources. Right? So you not only had the Scottish diaspora when the Jews migrated migrated away from Scotland when they were expelled by Edward I. But you also had a Jewish diaspora when they were kicked out of what they call Jerusalem. All right, going back to the 7th century, 8th century BC. All right, which is a false story or a false narrative compared to the concrete narrative. All right, which I'm going to give to you today. So the Ashkenazi Jews came about through the Jewish diaspora. The name Ashkenazi derives from the biblical figure of Ashkenaz, the first son of Gomer, son of Japheth, son of Noah, and Japhetic patriarch in the Tables of Nations, Genesis 10. The name Gomer has often been linked to the Sumerians, right? This is the abstract story that you're reading now. The biblical Ashkenaz usually derive from the Assyrian cuneiform word Ashkuza or Ishkuza, a people who expelled the Sumerians from the Armenian era of the Upper Euphrates. The name Ashkuza is identified with the Scythians. All right, the intrusive in the biblical name is likely due to the scribal error confusing a vav with a nun. Okay. Go to the Middle Ages stuff. That's where it most concerns us, right? This is where it most concerns us. Sometimes in the early middle in the medieval period, the Jews of Central and Eastern Europe came to be called by this term. Conforming to the customs of designated areas of Jewish settlement with biblical names, Spain, which denoted to Sephardim in Obadiah 20. France was called Sarafet in 1 Kings 79, and Bohemia was called the land of Canaan. These are all your references. Okay, anybody got a problem? There's your source. By the High Middle Period, the Talmudic commentator like Rashi began to use Ashkenazi or Eretz Ashkenaz to designate Germany, earlier known as Lothar. All right, and Lothar is what's called Lotharingia. All right, which is part of the Carolingian Empire. All right, it's part of the Carolingian Empire. All right, where especially in the Rhineland communities of Speyer, Worms, and Mainz. The most important Jewish communities arose. Rabbi uses Ishon, Ashkenaz, to describe Yiddish, and the Byzantium and Syrian Jewish letters refer to the Crusaders as Ashkenazim, giving close links between Jewish communities of France and Germany following the Carolingian unification. The term Ashkenaz came to refer to the Jews of both medieval France and Germany. Okay? Medieval France and Germany. Here go your source. It's not my own. Brother. So the Jewish diaspora and the Scottish diaspora are actually basically talking about the same people. All right. And these people are linked to the Carolingian. Because it said the Carolingian unification. What it said? Rashi. Who is this Rashi? Let's see who this Rashi is. Shalmo Shizaki, or if I'm pronouncing it wrong, much respect. 1040 AD to 1105 AD, generally known by the acronym Rashi, was a medieval French rabbi, the author and comprehensive commentator on the Talmud and the Hebrew Bible. All right, acclaimed for his ability to present the basic meaning of the text in concise lucid fashion, Rashid's commentaries appeal to both learned scholars and beginning students, and his work remains a centerpiece contemporary Torah study. A large fraction of rabbinic literature published since the Middle Ages discuss Rashid's either using his view as supporting evidence or debating against it. All right. So as we can see, I'm not making this up, and these are scholars. So if these are scholars, that must make us what? Scholars. Right? That makes you all scholars. As we can see, Rashi denotes that the Ashkenazi Jews are associated with the Crusaders, right? Which came about, um, through the communities of France and Germany following the Carolingian unification. So the Scottish Jews, or which are the Ashkenazi Jews, that came about as a result of the Scottish diaspora and the Jewish diaspora, are associated with the Crusaders and the Carolingian unification. Okay? The Carolingian unification. What is the Carolingian unification? Let's see, y'all. It's called the Carolingian Empire. The Carolingian Empire. The Carolingian Empire was a Frankish-dominated empire in Western and Central Europe during the early Middle Ages. It was ruled by the Carolingian dynasty, which had ruled as kings of France since 1751 and as kings of Lombards in Italy from 1774. In 800, the Frankish king Charlemagne was crowned emperor in Rome by Pope Leo III in an effort to transfer the Roman Empire from the Byzantine Empire to Western Europe. The Carolingian Empire is sometimes considered the first phase in the history of the Holy Roman Empire. So we see that the Jews, through the Jewish diaspora, who are the Scottish, to the Scottish now, to the Scottish diaspora, has transferred this perception or conception around the world. All right, which is a false history, a false chronological story, and a false timeline. Okay, let's prove it. And this is why they were expelled. First, we know that the Berbers' government was called Britain, and their uncode of law was called what? The Magna Carta. We read that in the 1911 Encyclopedia Britannica found in Edinburgh, Scotland, written by these Ashkenazi Jews or Scottish Jews about the history that they maintained through the Scottish Enlightenment. All right. This is why through the Scottish diaspora, they went and changed the view worldwide. Okay. They went and changed the view for how the view was. So when you're looking at it, the story is totally different from how the story really was. Right? Because now you're looking at the story from people who claim to be English, right? Which are the so-called Scottish, because the Scottish were the Jews who transferred the same story to the colony. All right, the same story to the colony. How we know that? Let's prove it. Britain means wise men, was the king council of the Anglo-Saxon government of England from before the 7th century until the 11th century. It comprised important noblemen, including aldermen, thanes, and bishops. Meaning of the Britain was sometimes called Britomart, the same word or term you see in the 1911 Encyclopedia of Britannica. Right? It was called Britomart. All right? I'm not going to stay long on this. Historiography, right? Historiography. The Saxon myths claims that the old Saxon Britain was the representative assembly of English landholders until it was disbanded by the Norman invaders. And we know when the Norman invaders talking about William the Conqueror and the Jews came in with William the Conqueror, and we know those Jews that came in with them are what we call Ashkenazi Jews, which go back to what we call the Jewish diaspora, which came about with the Carolingian unification, going back to the Carolingian Empire in the 7th century AD. All right, you're going back to Charles the Fat or Charles the Simple. One of them Charles. All right, and we're going to talk about today. So the Saxon myth claimed that the old Saxon Britain was a representative of the assembly of the English landowners until it was abandoned by the Norman invaders. But it later reappeared as the Parliament of England. Did y'all hear that? This is going back to Plantagenet crown. All right. This idea that goes back into the Magna Carta because the Magna Carta, the written Magna Carta, was passed by who? The Parliament of England. All right. It says the idea was held across the 13 colonies in North America and in the year prior to the American Revolution of 1776 and 1783. Among the believers was who? Thomas Jefferson and Jonathan Mayhew, the one who bears the surname Jefferson, but it's not a patronymic surname for him. It's just a color of skin for him because based off the Naturalization Act of 1790, that's what they associate their citizenship with. All right? Want the proof? Here's your source. So that's with them. So that shows the government from its beginning to the present. All right? As established in 1911 encyclopedia. Let's go to 1065. (1065) AD, Annos Dominios, in the year of our Lord. Ad conditionis means the founding of the city. Very important. Everyone has their correlative calendars to support their existence. All right? Very important. We're in the year 1065 AD. As you can see, there is no English Regnal year there. The only year you see is the Berber calendar, and the Berber calendar, the year is 2015. All right? You see all the respective, you see the Egyptian calendar, the Coptic calendar. You see the Ethiopian calendar. You see the Hebrew calendar. All right? Hindu. You see all the Igbo calendar. I even seen the Igbo tribe as Berber people. They had them up there. All right? So it's very important to understand that 1065, there was no English king. It says the English Regnal year. Let's see. Let's click that. Regnal years of English and British monarchs. First paragraph. The regnal years of English and British monarchs are the official regnal years of the monarch of the kingdom of, not England, Great Britain. All right? Because 1066 is when William Conqueror invaded England. All right? And that's when the English monarch year came in. In 1066, there was no English regnal year, but the kingdom of England was still existing. Okay? So don't let them fool you about what they say. The regnal year of English and British monarchs are the official regnal years of the monarch of the Kingdom of England when it was ruled from the time period of 1066 and May 1707, which was established by what we call the Treaty of Union, which made all the kingdoms, Ireland, Scotland, and Ireland unified. Okay? But not under the jure kingdom or rulership, but a de facto, because it was under what they call an interregnum. All right. We know an interregnum is a result of there is no demise to the king, meaning I'm moving from one position of a king to the next. Right. Let's move forward. What's going on in the year 1065? Europe, England. October 3rd, Northumbria rebelled against Sosing, a Danish king. He's taking refuge with his brother-in-law, Count Baldwin IV of Flanders, and the Northumbrian nobles choose Morcar as Earl of York. In December 28th, Westminster Abbey is consecrated by King Edward's confessor. Now, Westminster Abbey was built by who? And established for who? The English Benedictine monks through the English Benedictine reform that was started from Alfred the Great and came to its height under King Edward the Peaceful. All right? These are facts. You can't make this up. All right? So we know that in 1065, all the kings of Kingdom of England were not English kings. They were Berber kings. All Berber kings, let's just prove it. Let's go to 1 BC. One BC, y'all. Berber calendar. Don't mean before Christ. It means Berber calendar. That's what it means. That's what it has always been meant. But as we say, he who writes your books set your timeline. In order for you to exist in time, you must have a calendar. Year 1 BC for the common year starting on Friday and Saturday, and the Julian calendar. The source differs. See leap year era for further information. A leap year started on Thursday in the proleptic Julian calendar. It was also leap year starting on Saturday in the proleptic Gregorian calendar. At the time, it was known as the year of the consulship of Lentulus and Pisco, or less frequently, year of 753 ab urban condition. All right, which means the founding of the city. The denomination 1 BC for this year has been used since the early medieval period, where the Annus Dominius calendar era becomes the prevalent method in Europe for naming years. The following year is AD 1, and the widely used Julian calendar, which does not have a year 0. Okay? Now check this out. Watch your king, y'all. Watch your king. We know that the urban conditioner means the founding of a city, right? The founding of the city. Ab urbe conditioner, Latin word from the founding of a city, all right? And the year since the city's founding, abbreviated as AUC or ABC, expressed a date in the year since 753 BC, all right? 753 BC. And the Roman calendar, or what we call the Gregorian calendar, it will be 1 BC. So the ab urbe conditioner of the founding of the city is 753 BC, not AD, BC. And the Berber year would be 1 BC, not AD, BC. Let's see. We're in BC, so we'll assume that is ab urbe is 753 BC, the founding of the city, and was there determined it to be 1 BC as a result of them using what calendar? The Gregorian calendar, which was created in what year? 1582 by who? Pope Gregory XIII, who descended down from who? Pope Gregory I, who converted who? The Anglo-Saxon brothers to what? Christianity in what year? 597. All right? Through the Gregorian reform by these Roman Catholics who are now controlling our estate. Okay? It's a fact. So the Gregorian calendar, which we know is a false calendar, and we know the true calendar according to our history, which is the year Berber is 950, because ab conditioner takes you back to 753 BC. So who was ruling back there in the year 753 BC, which was the founding of the city, which they trying to make act like it's actually 1 BC, which we know it's not, because ain't no English reading down here, right? They said the estimated time of birth of Jesus exists in Annos Dominios. The Annos Dominios means in what? The year of our Lord. We're in 1 BC. We ain't even in AD 1. All right? If we go from 1 BC to 1 AD, it will be 951 AD. All right? Let's prove it. 1 AD. Look at the wall. Everybody watch the Berber count. This is AD 1. Annos Dominios. What year is it? 951. Right? If it's 951, there's no English king here. There's a Berber king, and King Edgar came to rule at 959. That's when he began his rule as the king of England. That's when the Benedictine reform was established and came into its height in 959. That's when Westminster Abbey was founded in what year? 959. Okay? Y'all gonna have to know this. Come home. So we see 1 BC under the Gregorian calendar is based upon the founding of the city, what they call Latin ab urb conditita, all right? Which in the Berber is 950. So let's go to 753 BC. Very important. 753 BC, all right? Which in ancient Greek would be the 194th Olympic game. All right, this is a game to them. Everybody pull up 38th century BC. Everybody pull it up. We tell you how the Jews, we wrote our story. The Ashkenazi Jews wrote our story. Prove it to you. I call the Hebrews. Go back to 1 BC. Everybody look at this calendar. It's ab herb condition of 753 BC, which means Berber calendar, because you got a Berber calendar there. It's 950. All right. 950 is in the what we call the 22nd dynasty of what they misnomer as Egypt. All right. The 22nd dynasty of what they call Egypt. That's under what we call Shoshin. All right. That will be ab herb condition of the founding of the city. All right. The founding of the city. Now let's look at the Berber calendar, the Hebrew calendar. The Hebrew calendar is 3760 or 3761. This is the year when God created the heavens and the earth and the Hebrew calendar. But the Berber people are here on this planet. So in that case, they must be gods. Because the Hebrew calendar showing the history concerning the Hebrews who are associated with the Israelites, who are associated with the Ashkenazi Jews, who are affiliated with the Jewish diaspora, and then it came to what they call the Enlightenment, all right, the Scots Enlightenment, because we know the Scots Enlightenment took place in what we call Scotland, Edinburgh in Scotland, all right? And once they got they, excuse my French, shit together, then they went on what they call the Scottish diaspora when they spread it around the world, all right, including here. These are facts, all right? So the Hebrew year is 3761, all right? Where in the Berber year is 950, all right? And the founding of the city is 753 BC, which in the Greek year is 194th Olympe. And everybody else got their corresponding calendar to correlate their existence, all right? Everybody got their own calendar. If you don't have a calendar, you don't exist. So we're going to take a look at Earth conditioner 753 BC, and we're going to take a look at the Hebrew calendar, 3760 to 3761, because we know the Egyptians don't come around to 3100 BC. The Greeks don't come around, or the Greek one who told the story about the Egyptians don't come around to 3100 BC. And that means that the Hebrews are in existence before the Egyptians are. Okay, I didn't write this because they got to copy the calendar right here. It's negative 284. What calendar are the Egyptians using if they're not using this one? All right? Are they using the Ethiopian? Are they using the Hebrew calendar? Because if they use the Hebrew calendar, that means the world just began. Let's prove it. 38th century BC. Thirty-eighth century BCE. Under the calendar. Looking at a calendar, y'all. We can't talk about nothing if we don't have a calendar for it. Events. Earthquake near Neolithic culture of Soteria in Cyprus. Ubaid period. Telebrac. What's it? Telbrac. Let's go here. I see it. 25th of Elul, 21st September 3760 BC, concerning the first day of creation from formless matter. Genesis 1:12, justly interpreted as out of nothing, on which the Bible recalls that God created existence, time, matter, darkness, and light. Okay? First, the Tishara, 26 September 3760, considered the sixth day of creation, Rosh Hashanah, day one, on which the biblical recall that God created Adam and Eve. All right? So let's go back to 1 BC. See the Hebrew year, 3760. So that means that nobody else is on the planet. All right? Except who? The Berber. All right? The Berber people. Why? Let's prove why. Let's go to air conditioner, the founding of the city, which we know the Berbers not the Greeks not the Berbers. All right? Let's go to the founding of the city, which the Christians called under the Gregorian calendar 1 BC, which is the Berber year 950 AD. annos Dominius in the year of our Lord. Because the Lord that was living in that year was who? King Edward the Peaceful, which I'm the reincarnation of, who actually looks just like me. Okay? See. 753 BCE. I see the year, 753 BC. What dynasty is it? It's the Greek era, the sixth Olympiad, but in ancient Egypt era, it's the 23rd dynasty. Ab Urb Conditioner 1, the founding of the city, which actually is 1 BC. The Berber counter, because the Berber counter is the Berber counter. All right. And in the Berber year is the Berber counter year is actually 198. All right. We're going up. We're going up. Y'all going down. We're going up. So in 753 BC, after condition of founding city 1, according to ancient Egyptians, it's the 23rd dynasty. So let's go to 23rd dynasty. The 23rd dynasty of Egypt, misnomer, is usually classified as the third dynasty of the ancient Egyptian third intermediate period. This dynasty consists of a number of Meshwest kings who ruled either pharaohs or as independent kings as part of Upper Egypt from 800 BC to 720 BC, and pharaohs from 837 BC to 725 BC. Everybody see that, right? 23rd dynasty of Egypt of the Meshwest kings. All right, of the Meshwest kings. Berbers, everybody got their name for them. The Egyptians called them Libu or Tehanu. I think I'm saying it wrong, but let's just see. Let's go to the Meshwest. The Meshwest, often abbreviated in ancient Egyptian as Ma, was an ancient Libyan tribe, along with other groups like the Libu and the Tehanu and the Tejebmehu from Menashe Rome. Please forgive me. All right. Early records of the Meshwest date back to the 18th dynasty of Egypt from the reign of Amenhotep from 1390 to 1350 BC. During the 19th and 20th dynasty, Meshwest were almost constant conflict with the Egyptian state. Did you hear that? During the late 21st dynasty, increasing numbers of the Meshwest Libyans began to settle in the western delta region of Egypt. They were ultimately take control of the country during the late 21st dynasty, first under Asorkan the Elder. After the interregnum, hear that word, interregnum, of 38 years, during which the native Egyptian king Solomon and Success II assumed the throne. The Meshwest Egyptians ruled throughout the 22nd and the 23rd dynasty under many pharaohs such as Shoshing I or Sorkhan the first and second, Shoshing the third, and Sorkhan the third. The Shoshing the first is the one you see in your Bible called Shishak. All right. And Shishak was born in 943, just like King Edward was born in what? 943 BC. All right. 943 BC. All right. We know that the Libyan king ruling in 753 before, the Berber king living in 753 BC was Shoshing V. All right. Shoshing V. He was ruling at that particular time. Let's go back to the calendar. 753 BC, the 23rd dynasty was ruling, which were Libyan Berbers. As we can see in the Berber calendar, it's 129. All right. We're using our own calendar. We're using our own calendar, not what the ancient Egyptians say, because they fabricate that story. We have always been into existence. Well, let's prove it further. Edict of Expulsion. The expulsion and exodus of the Jews. Everybody see that, right? There's an article about 1290 Edict of Expulsion from England for the 1492 Edict of Expulsion from Spain. See Alhambra degree. For other historic instances of Jews being expelled from the land where they resided, see expulsion of exodus of the Jews. So they gave you three examples: England, Spain, and Jerusalem. All right, or Israel. All right. Now we know that how in the hell did they make it all the way from Jerusalem all the way up to Scotland? I mean to England, because we know they made it to England because they came in with William the Conqueror, and then were expelled in 1290 by Edward I, who was ruling the Kingdom of England when he expelled the Jews, which are the same people, the Ashkenazi Jews. All right, the Ashkenazi Jews, and the Ashkenazi Jews didn't come to the understanding of who they was or became competent until, as they said, the 18th century through the Scottish Enlightenment, and then it came about through the Scottish diaspora. Before you had that, you had the Jewish diaspora when they were being expelled. All right, they were being expelled, but like we say, who writes your books? Set your timeline. So what timeline are you going to listen to? Because we know while the Berbers are existing on the planet, according to the Hebrew calendar, the world is just being made. Okay, so we're gonna believe our story, and you can believe your story. All right, get to it. The Edict of Expulsion of the Jews in England was in 1290 by Edward I. All right, son of Henry III, son of Henry II, son of Godfrey the Fifth Count of Anjou, son of Fulk, ruler of Jerusalem. All right, and that's where the Jews were supposed to be from, Jerusalem. So why they get expelled from Jerusalem and they were supposed to be family and citizens of Jerusalem? I can prove my ancestors going back to Jerusalem, the plantations and ground. I can prove that. Whether y'all want to believe it or not, I can prove it. Just by the surname Goff, right? Let's get it there. So we see the Edict of Expulsion in 1290, which is the concrete story, versus the abstract story, the expulsion from Exodus. All right, so let's deal with that. Expulsion of Exodus of the Jews, which are the same people, Ashkenazi Jews. Right? So as we can see, Ab Urban Conditioner, which is the founding of the city of the Berber, which is the 23rd dynasty of the Berber Libyan, contrast to Misnama as being Egyptians, also at the same time where these Jews are excluded from this holy city. All right, as we can see here in 733 BC. All right, and we know Berber kings were ruling at this time. Berber kings are ruling at this time. So according to the Hebrew calendar or the Assyrian calendar, everybody got a calendar to tell their story. All right, we're going back to the time era of 7 to 8th century BC to track the timeline of the expulsions of the Jews from their home. Okay, we're gonna use their timeline. We can't use our calendar. We got to use their calendar. Let's go back to 1 BC. Let's see if we do a Jewish calendar up there on the docket. Do we see a Jewish calendar up here? No Jewish calendar. Got a Hebrew calendar, right? And the Hebrew calendar, the world was being created, so ain't no Jews around, right? But the Berber year is 950, and the founding of the city, it says 950. What said the founding of the city was 753, which goes back to the 22nd dynasty of the Libyan Berbers, according to their story. All right. I'm not saying the story going back to the 23rd and 23rd and 22nd dynasty of Egypt is real because they wrote those books. They wrote those stories. You know what I'm saying? I'm not Egyptian. So I'm not going to take the Egyptian story to be true. Because we just read it in the 1911 that the Berbers were the Anglo-Saxon Berbers. That's what we read by those who created this narrative. The Ashkenazi Jews do their enlightenment, what we call their Scots Enlightenment in the 18th century. So 1 BC, Berber year 950. All right, let's go back to the exclusion of the Jews. Let's get the timeline. We got our calendar, they got their calendar. So 733, if you go back to the one calendar, it's 753 BC. Right? If it's 1 BC according to the Gregorian year, and then the founding of the city is 753. 753 come before 733 BC. And we're in 733 BC, when in the Berber year is 950. Okay? It's 950. You must understand that. So back to the exclusion of Exodus of the Israelites from their Holy Land. As we can see, 733 BC. All right? The dates go down. 722 BC. Babylonian captivity. 597 BC. All right? Keep going down. I'm not concerned about the story because the story is false. I'm going to prove it. So from 500 to 1 BC, exposure from the city of Rome under the accusation of aggressive proselytizing among the Romans. All right? So 500 BC is to 100 AD. That will be from 500 to 1 AD to 500 AD, Christian era. Okay? CE is the Christian era when Christ is there. All right? So we see here, we going back up from BC to AD, then we right here and this right here between here. Right here. 1 BC, we know in the Berber year is 950, where King Edgar the Peaceful is ruling. I repeat, 1 BC and is 950 AD, where King Edgar the Peaceful. All right? You went from 1 BC to 1 AD, and then 1 AD is 951, where King Edgar the Peaceful is ruling. Let's just look. He's not a king yet, but he's on his way. 1 BC. Berber year is 950. 1 AD. The Berber year is 951. So the years are going up. We went down and we're coming up. All right. Very important for y'all to see these numbers. All right. The numbers, mathematics don't lie. Okay. Mathematics does not lie. Let's go back to the explosion. All right. So 1 BC, all right, to 599 Christian era is where they were expelled from the city of Rome by Emperor Tiberius together with practitioners of Egyptian religion. All right. So this 19 CE or Christian era would be 19 AD. So let's go to 19 AD. All right. And see what's going on. AD. The Berber is 969. There still ain't no English read now. Ain't no English read now here. This is the Berber year. All right. It's still a Berber year. We still in existence here. And AD 9. Let's go back to Exodus. Okay. Once again, from 1 BC to 1 AD is the year 950, 951 for us in the Berber calendar. All right. 950, 951 for us in the Berber calendar. But the person who's writing our story is using a different calendar to identify us. That's what we need to understand. Let's go back to 1 AD. Get our story right. This 1 AD is key. The 1 BC. It's key. You have 1 BC. All right. The year 1 BC under Gregorian year, under the traditional, under the urban conditioner, which is a Latin term, so we know they wrote that. All right, because Latin is not Berber and Berber is not Latin. So we know urban conditioner means 753, and we know 753 at that time was at the time of the 23rd dynasty of what we call the Libyan Berber. All right, of Libyan Berber. Let's go back to it. 753 BC. Get the math. The math don't lie. 753. 753 BC under 23rd dynasty, whereas Shosing the fifth, all the Shosing the first, second, third, fourth, fifth, under the 22nd, 23rd dynasty was ruling back here in 753 BC because the calendar said the calendar is a Berber calendar. But we know we see here in the Berber calendar, it also says 198. So let's go to 198 according to what we see in the Berber calendar and see what year is that. Because if it's 753 BC, so this will be 198 BC. All right, not AD. It will be because they're going down. 753, then it will be 198 BC. All right, according to the calendar. Let's go 198 BC. Ooh, see the flip? Not 198 BC and 753 urban conditions, the founding of the city, and the Berber year is 198 BC. But if you go to 198 BC, now you have the Berber year is what? 753 AD. All right. And you still don't have an English week down here. You still don't have a Jewish week down here. All right. So you see the Berber year calendar is 753 AD. So from 753 BC, the 22nd dynasty of Shoshin, the 22nd dynasty of 753, when we were expelled from our kingdom to what we call the Exodus, which is a false story, because the false story is the story when we were enslaved through the 100-Year Wars. The 100-Year Wars, the War of the Roses, the Second 100-Year War, and all that happened after that is considered the story of the missing year. All right, it's the story of the missing year because we see here 198 BC. It's in the Berber year. What year? 753 AD. All right. So let's look up 753 AD. All right, and see what year is that there. And we're gonna go right back into the Ashkenazi Jews who go back to the Carolingian unification, which is associated with the Carolingian Empire. All right, you're gonna see it. The Carolingian Empire is where all these descendants who are now posing as other identities are telling the story for the Carolingian Empire. How we know? Let's watch. 750 AD, 753 AD. The Berber year is what year? 1703. Who's ruling right there? Queen Anne, a British monarch. We know she was ruling under the crown in 1702. The popular economy was surrendered back to the crown in 1702. The crown goes all the way back to Britain, all right, under the Anglo-Saxon Berbers, all right? So we see the year 753. It's a time, what's going on in 753? Let's see. Europe. Frankish Duke of an illegitimate son, Charles de Martel, rebelled against King Pepin III the Short, his half-brother in alliance with the Bretons. He flees to Italy to join King Ethelwulf of Lombard, but is caught and killed while passing in the Elbe. Why is this important? Let's go to the Carolingian Empire. Because we know that the Ashkenazi Jews Rashid described Yiddish, i.e., the language of the Ashkenazi Jews who are taking over the Berber history, going back to the Byzantine era, back to Constantinople, even the Ottoman Empire. All right, because this all involved Crusaders, which were all under the authority of the Pope. All right, and they're the one who crucified Jesus because John said they crucified Jesus in the English history as told when the Jews were in England. All right, which we'll go to in a second. So it said Rashi used described the Yiddish and Byzantinium and Syrian Jews that letters referred to as Crusaders as Ashkenazims. Given the close link between the Jewish communities of France and Germany following the Carolingian unification, the term Ashkenazi came to refer to the Jews of both medieval Germany and France. Okay, so you see it right here. Let's go to Carolingian Empire. Carolingian Empire, 800 AD to 887 AD, was a Frankish dominant empire in Western and Central Europe during the early medieval ages. All right, let's go down to 753. All right, let's go down to 753. Rise of the Carolingians or the Carolingian dynasty. Uh, Though Charles Martel chose not to take the title of king as his son Pepin III would, or emperor as his grandson Charlemagne, he was the absolute ruler of virtually all of today's continental Western Europe, north of Paris. Only the remaining Saxon rim, which he partly conquered, Lombardy and Marcia Hispanica, south to the Pyrenees, were significant addition to the Frankish rim after his death. So who is this Charles Martel? Not Charles Martel, somebody else. Still under the Carolingian Empire. Still under the Carolingian Empire. All right, we're gonna go right back here first. 753 AD. All right, 753 AD, which we know and Berber year is 1703, and that represents the crown because the crown was ruling at that time. Even though it was a British monarch, the crown was ruling. All right, even though it was a British monarch in 1702, New Jersey represented the crown. It was called New Jersey Provincial Council or the King's Council. Back in when our ancestors Alfred the Great had it, it was called Witten. All right, or Wittenmont. As you can see, York, Frankish Duke, and illegitimate son Charles Martel rebelled against his family member. Okay, let's go back to Carolingian Empire and look for Charles Martel. He right here. Though Charles Martel chose not to take title to the king, his son Pepper III, they were fighting amongst themselves. Why is this important, y'all? Let's see. Council of Anjou. Counts and Dukes of Anjou were the rulers of the county of Anjou, granted by, or soon to be by, Charles the Bald in the 9th century to Robert the Strong. Ingler and his son Folk the Red were viscounts until Folk assumed the title of count. That's my family. The Robertians and the Capetine kings were distracted by wars with the Vikings and other concerns and were unable to recover the county until the reign of Philip II of Augustus more than 270 years later. All right. So as we can see, you got the Robertians, right? Robertians, Robert the Strong, Odo. Then you got the House of Angler. Totally different houses. French kings and Frankish kings. The Frankish kings descended down from the Carolingians, and the Carolingians descended down from the Merovingians under Clovis III. They all gave birth to what they call the Capetine dynasty. All right? Yes, the Capetine dynasty. Prove it. Robertians. Robertians, sometimes called Robertines, and modern scholars are the proposed Frankish family, which was ancestral to the Capetine dynasty and thus to the royal families of France of many other countries, counting Spain and Luxembourg. Okay? Founded by Hughes Capet, 987. All right? They're not the same as the Plantagenet dynasty. Why? Let's go here. The Capitan Plant Dynasty Bobby was a series of conflicts and disputes and covered a period of 100 years wars during the House of Capet, rulers of the Kingdom of France. Frankish kings, though, fought the House of Plantagenet, French kings, also known as the House of Anjou, rulers of the Kingdom of England, over the Plantagenet-held Angevin Empire, which at its peak covered around half of the territory within France. This is why, as I said, you have what they call the First 100-Year War, the Second 100-Year War, the War of the Roses, and as the War of the Roses, who came into place? Henry VII, who took over the Lancaster branch by way of the War of the Roses, and then he instituted through what we call the Treaty of Perpetual Peace of 1503 by the marriage of Margaret. All right, of Margaret. And from there, you had the Union of the Crown in 1603. And from there, you had the Treaty of Union of 1707. And from there, you had the Settlement Act of 1700, what was it? Queen Elizabeth I. And from everything, it became a domino effect. All right? It became a domino effect. But the ruling house was the house of Plantagenet. Why? In closing, the House of Plantagenet was a royal house which originated in the French country of Anjou. The name Plantagenet is used by modern historians to identify four distinct royal houses: the Angevins, who were also counts of Anjou, the male line of Plantagenet, following the loss of Anjou, the loss of Anjou, the House of Lancaster in Europe, two of the Plantagenet cadet branches. The family held the English throne from 1154 with the assistance of Henry II until 1485. Under Plantagenet, England was transformed, although this was only part intentional. The Plantagenet kings were often forced to negotiate compromises such as the Magna Carta. All right, and we're going to close that on here. 1911 Encyclopedia. We know that the Magna Carta was a written document versus the unwritten document or the unwritten code that was established by the Anglo-Saxon Berbers. The Arab has built his social structure on the Quran, which inculcates absolutism, aristocracy, and theocracy. The Berber, despite his nominal Mohammedanism, is a democrat with his Jimna Wittemat and his Qanun, or unwritten code, the Magna Carta of the individual liberties as opposed to the community of good. So you mean, so we see we have an unwritten code. Why? Because the unwritten code is the customary law that we practiced before we were subverted and converted to something other than our own. That's why it had to be preserved by writing it down. As I always say, you who write your books, set your timeline. With that, I'm gonna open the floor for questions. Are there any questions from the members? Only members. I'll wait for questions, if there are any. Just gonna close out on this. BC, history of the Jews of Scotland. No, the Berbers, that is the name we identify with based off the name of the people. All right, because as we see, the word Berber originated in London, right? Originated in London. We spell it in English, all right? You're not using spelling it in any other language. You're using it or you're spelling it in English, all right? But we know English was a term to distinguish them from what we call Saxons. All right. So it says the history of the name Berber begins with the Anglo-Saxon tribe of Britain. All right. We know Britain is a name that is predated by other names. We call it Albion. All right. It says the history of the name Berber begins with the Anglo-Saxon tribe Britain and is derived from the baptismal name meaning son of Barbara. That name comes from the Christianization going back to the Anglo-Saxon conversion in the 6th century by the Roman Catholic Church. And then it trickled down and became associated as a nickname for people known as Moors and Berbers who don't associate the name as a surname. They associate the name as an identity or a characteristic or what they call ethnicity, but it has nothing to do with genealogy. You understand? Like we said, you got a lot of people trying to use the history of the Berber, but they are not Berbers. All right. You got Arab Berbers, you got Jewish Berbers, you got Ethiopian Berbers, you got all people trying to identify with the word Berbers, but they don't have a calendar to support their existence. As I say, he who write your books, set your timeline. All right. If there's no more questions, I'm going to close out on this. I really appreciate you, brother Dever from the House of Dever, showing up today. I just want everyone to have a clear understanding that the history of the Jews that originated as a result of the Scottish Enlightenment, which we know because the Encyclopedia Britannica company, which was incorporated in Edinburgh, Scotland, tells our story. All right, and the ones who telling our story are apparently those ones who are claimed to be the Jews going back to the biblical days. All right, in order for them to be that, they need another calendar. But we know when their calendar was created, our calendar was already in place. All right. Yes, 3761. And the Hebrew calendar, when the world being created, is actually 950, well into our story. All right. So with that, I love you all. I hope that you all will do ask you questions in regards to yesterday's video and today's video, writing a short, detailed skit about the video. All right. And this is mandatory. All right. You can do it before the week is out. It's mandatory that all members of the Third to English Church of England, or all those astronomy members of the Third to English Church of England, must do a brief insight on yesterday's video and today's video in regards to what it is that you have heard, obtained, and as well as understand, or what we should say, overstand, right? Because this determines if you are a faithful member of the Third Temple English Church, right? In light of that, I greeted you as I greeted you, always in peace and love.